Welcome to the Reddit Chronicles. Today we will be reading from Petty Revenge. Our first post is by Wicked Paul. Non-French people telling me how to eat French food. I don't know if this counts as petty revenge, but here goes. Currently in Paris with my partner and staying here for a month. My in-laws, they're French, this will be relevant, have an apartment in the city so we can stay for as long as we want. My partner was nearby taking a phone call, so I went to a very touristy and popular cafe nearby to try their famous chocolat chaud and see what the hype is about. And croissants so I could dip it in the hot chocolate, a very popular breakfast for the French. As my order arrived, a family of 4 parents, 2 daughters, sat at the table next to me. I was tearing off a small piece of the croissant when the mom cleared her throat and said to me, hun, it's usually eaten with a fork and knife so your fingers don't get greasy. I turned and see all of their disapproving faces, silently judging me for being so uncultured. Oh, sorry. And picked up my fork and knife. I could see my partner walking towards me having finished his phone call, and I slowly cut my croissant with the knife and fork. My partner saw me and burst out laughing. He was like, "What are you doing?" So I turned innocently at the family and said, "Well, they told me I have to eat it with a knife and fork so I won't look uncultured." Oh, sorry. And picked up my fork and knife. I could see my partner walking towards me having finished his phone call, and I slowly cut my croissant with the knife and fork. My partner saw me and burst out laughing. He was like, "What are you doing?" So I turned innocently at the family and said, "Well, they told me I have to eat it with a knife and fork so I won't look uncultured." Partner turned to them and said in a very exaggerated French accent, "Madame, are you French?" They all shook their heads no, he continued. "We only eat croissants with our hands. No French will tell you otherwise. Please don't spread this nonsense if you are not French." They all ate their croissants with their hands, and my partner looking over them like a proud teacher lol. Our next post is by No Mathematician. A lady steals from me. Joke's on her. She has been poking around for years. She lives across the street. She takes my mail, fruit from my trees, things from my yard. I've caught her multiple times, but she seems to think she has every right. Never enough for me to take legal actions. To be honest, I'm busy as hell these days. One day she was by my mailbox with her dog in her pajamas reading a letter from my bank regarding my small car loan. Just standing there, reading, glasses on, cigarette in hand, reading it. I confronted her and said opening people's mail is a crime, not like you have the money to fight it. Haha. I thought fine. You want to read someone's mail? I'll give you enough of your own to read. There's a religious organization nearby. Not sure if they're a cult or a legit organized religion. They leave notes and knock on doors, that type of thing. I'm always kind enough to them, so I get their propaganda in the mailbox every now and again. I used a VPN to go to their website. They had some type of questionnaire application thing. I used a fake email address, fake name, but her address. It also wanted a phone number. Her dog comes and poops on my lawn every evening. One night, I saw him out there, gave him an unsuspecting pat and took a photo of the tag on his collar. Scurried back home and redid the application with her address and phone number. I see them come by 4 times a week to her house now, random times, sometimes 7 a.m., sometimes 8 p.m. most weekends. Knocking, leaving massive packs of papers and shit in her mailbox, on her porch. I just know they're most likely calling her constantly too. There you go, nosy neighbor. Lots of important scripture to read and keep you busy. Enjoy. Edit. Yeah, I've reported her 6 times over the past few years. Cops take my statement. I gave them photos of her. I can literally see her house from my house. She's a stone's throw away. Never done anything like steal my packages or anything good. I can't be bothered making more reports for stolen letters. Well, rather read and stuffed back in letters, grapefruit, rocks and soil, succulents, and the cheesy garden gnome I got from an office Christmas party. Honestly, I was glad she took that one. Our next post is by Deftonics. I got my dirty roommate fired. I, 30F, am from Country A, and a few years ago, I was hired by a company in Country B. I had to move to Country B for a few months in order to be trained for the job, and then I could go back home to keep working remotely. I was hired more or less at the same time as a few other people from my country. As a result, the company had to find a suitable accommodation to put us in for several weeks, and so hotels were not an option. They found apartments for rent and put 2 employees from country A in each apartment. I was the last employee from country A to be hired, and as a result, I was accommodated in the only apartment that still had a free spot, with a roommate from my country, who we will call Jeff, 32M. Cue to my first day in country B. I was picked up at the train station after a long plane ride, and Jeff and others were kind enough to come get me to walk me to the apartment building we were all sharing. During the walk, Jeff kept telling me how long he had spent cleaning the apartment to make it ready for me, and I was thankful. However, when we got to the apartment, it was nasty, full of dirt, and what I want to assume were Jeff's beard hairs spattered around the place. The toilet was disgusting. The kitchen was sticky up to the ceiling, so I spent my first few days cleaning everything behind Jeff's back so as to not offend him. Some people's standards of cleanliness are different, so I thought nothing of it. Weeks passed and Jeff never cleaned again. He was incredibly messy, never cleaned after himself, walked in dirty mud boots all around the house, never did a single dish, never washed his bedsheets, barely showered, often forgot to flush the toilet after using it, never opened a single window to air the house, etc. I was absolutely disgusted and anxious the entire time I lived there, and I cleaned the house like a sick person each day to keep it livable for me. On our last night before returning to our home country, I packed my suitcases, washed all towels, linens, clothes, floors, surfaces, appliances, everything. Jeff chose to get pissing drunk instead, and not pack his suitcase or clean his room because he said it would take him 10 minutes the next morning. The next morning I got a knock on the door at approximately 9 a.m. It was our boss coming to pick up Jeff because his flight was early in the morning. He was going to a different part of our country. Jeff was asleep in his dirty room, and I had to wake him up. He panicked, threw a few things in his suitcase, and ran for the door. Before he left, I asked if he intended on cleaning his bedroom, as he promised, and he begged me to do it, because I'm a better cleaner, and he was too much in a rush. I called him a pig, and he left. Cue my revenge. I had spent several weeks cleaning after him, not complaining to not come across as annoying, and just putting my head down and cleaning to make the house livable for me. I was so done and did not want to pick up any more hair or dirt coming from this man's body. So I called our boss. I explained the situation. The company had told us to leave the apartment spotless, otherwise they wouldn't get their deposits back. My boss came to the house to check Jeff's room and was appalled at what he saw. He profusely apologized to me, went to a supermarket and bought new cleaning supplies, even brought a Hoover from his own house. He spent the next few hours scrubbing the room on his hands and knees. He threw out the clothes and personal items Jeff had forgotten. And best of all, a few weeks after, and seeing Jeff's performance was completely subpar, he fired Jeff. If he hadn't been such a terrible human, he might have helped him get better at the job, but he chose to fire him instead. Long story short, Jeff ruined his own chances at a very good job, and I was thanked over and over again for putting up with the situation so gracefully. I also got a raise shortly after. So long story short, don't be a pig. It can have bigger consequences than expected. Our next post is by Life Parfait. Roommate used me, so I told his mom. Okay, so this happened a couple years ago while living in my first apartment with friends. There were a couple people that rotated through the apartment, but the result ended up being the same. My roommate, 20 to 21M, let's call him D, and I, 23 to 24F at the time, had gone through about 3 roommates during our lease. The first, a friend of mine, decided to move back in with family and stopped paying rent, so she left. The second roommate, let's call him J, had an urgent and very important family matter and had to move back home to care for his relative. The third roommate, call him R, decided to stay. This is all relevant later. So when we moved in, I was struggling mentally due to some personal reasons, and I quit my job. I did what I could to make money, and still contribute to the bills. Dee picked up the slack and I was so grateful. What I wasn't grateful for was a disgusting kitchen every single day. I provided everything in that apartment except his personal items and his food. Everything else I brought or was gifted. Furniture, dishes, lamps, food, seasoning, beverages, all of it. Dee has also terrible hygiene. He worked in fast food and restaurant kitchen cooking, and always smelled like grease and a gross kitchen after work, but wouldn't shower, just get in bed or change his clothes, and then get in bed. He always smelled bad to the point I'd repeatedly request he shower. Day after day I begged him to clean up, he never did. It was always, okay, yeah I got it. But never, hey, I did it, so I got stuck cleaning. I got tired of wanting to cook and being unable to because all of my dishes were in the sink. Our next door neighbor had roaches and I found one in our cabinet and told him to take care of it. Once he saw it, a tiny one, he freaked out and started doing his own version of a deep clean, wiping everything down with a wet rag. That's it. Between R&D, I couldn't take it anymore. By early 2022, I had gotten a great new job with amazing pay. I started contributing and doing my part with bills. I was over the moon. R, however, had not contributed a dime as he didn't have a job. Jay had offered to let him move in without talking to me and Dee, knowing that R did not have a job. The road was rocky with Jay for other reasons, so I left it. R and D got along famously, which was great. Dee needed a friend since him and I were butting heads every waking moment. Well, one day Dee comes home and says his work hours got cut and he was looking for something new. All good. I could cover the slack like he did for me. And I do, from March to August when our lease ended. In that time, the dirty kitchen got worse. I'm talking food had mold growing on it, refrigerated items were being left out, multiple trash bags in the kitchen. Dee parked right next to the dumpster, and the icing in the cake, a raw chicken alternating between the fridge and the counter. It leaked raw chicken blood juice everywhere. This never got cleaned. At this point, I had stopped cleaning and stopped caring. I was footing the bills for the apartment and cleaning while these two bums were off spending money on shoes and girls. I had had enough. Dee and I got into it one last time before move out. He blamed everything on me. The dirty kitchen, the roommates that left, bills not being paid. I told him that was his mess. I can't control other people, and I'm not his mom. We didn't speak for 2 months. So for 2 months, R&D had to cook and eat in their own dishes. Reminder, they had none. I packed up all of my stuff and put it in my closet in a way that would be obvious if they moved it. They had no regard for my space when I wasn't home. Would just go in my room to use my bathroom or get a dish. They were livid. We finally move out, and I clean the entire apartment, top to bottom. The carpets in their rooms had to be replaced, so we lost the deposit. We got the bill for the cleaning services and asked for their part of the payment. R still had no job and D was living back home with his mom. For months, I reached out to D for his payment, but he would block me wherever I reached out. Eventually, I told him I was going to take him to small claims court and he ignored me. So I called his mom to tell her my plans. D's mom was a sweetheart to me always. She even tried to warn me about living with him, but didn't disclose why. When I told her I was going to sue, I told her everything. She asked when he last helped with bills, and I told her since April. Turns out from April to August, he had been asking his mom for money for the bills and spending it elsewhere. She was livid. She assured me that I was going to get my money back, and if I didn't, I could sue. He called me and immediately started cussing me out. I hung up on him. His mom checked in every couple of weeks to make sure I was getting my payments. He planned to pay it back in 2 months. It took him 6. Use me as your live-in housemaid and bank account. Deal with the consequences of stealing from your mother. Edit to answer questions. I was still trying to make money by doing Uber Eats, DoorDash, and lots of babysitting because this was 2021 and COVID was still kicking our asses. Someone asked for pictures because I still have them, but I'm having a hard time doing so, and as soon as I can, I'll add them. Is this really revenge? It felt like it to me. I wasn't trying to tell on him. I was trying to inform him that I was going to take him to court for the money he owed me for the cleaning bill. If you don't think this fits in the sub, suggest where it should go then. Jay was the one on the lease, and he moved R in to take over for him, so no, I could not go after R legally. Thank you for listening to the Reddit Chronicles. Follow for more content.